Hello and welcome to the Washington Week Extra. I'm Gwen Eiffel. We spend a lot of time talking about the two major candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, but less time focusing on Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson, who much to his chagrin will not be on the debate stage Monday night. I asked him about that on the NewsHour.
Interestingly, something that I did not know is that I am polling higher than Ross Perot was polling before he was admitted into those debates.
The rules were different.
The rules were different, and of course the rules were really adopted to make sure that a third party would never be on the stage again.
So what do you do?
Well, you just keep plugging away. I mean, I'm representing, I think, the majority of voters in this country. Majority of voters in this country don't know that, but, you know, that's my task.
Well, plugging away is as good a way as any to describe it. But unlike Perot, for instance, Johnson does not have millions of dollars to spend. So missing the debate is kind of a big deal for him, Bev.
I mean, if he's not on the debate stage, people just don't know who he is. So you remember that gaffe he made a couple weeks ago when he was asked about Syria, what is Aleppo? And it was, a devastating moment. But was it devastating? Did it hurt him? Is he in worse position off than he is now? He's sort of in the same anonymous place.
I talked to a voter in Colorado who is a Republican who just can't bring himself to support Donald Trump, who's going to support Gary Johnson. When I asked him about the Aleppo comment, his response to me was, well, everybody doesn't have to know everything. People are voting for interesting reasons this year.
Well, you hear that a lot from the Trump allies when you point out his, lack of policy knowledge. Well, he hasn't been studying this for years and reading briefing books and looking at polls. Exactly. For decades, the way Hillary Clinton is, and that's considered an asset. That he hasn't studied and he hasn't done his homework. He's spontaneous. He's shooting from the hip. That's what you hear from his supporters and allies, which is just another way of saying he's woefully unprepared.
Yeah, well, Gary Johnson is, the best I could get from it was that he has decided that merely being on programs like ours would give him raise his visibility and allow him to get onto debate stages. Not sure that's how it works, but I think that's the latest high-profile theory they have. Jennifer, I want to ask you about a story you wrote this week, which I think is as much an indication of any that the Republican Party is attempting to get into the game on technology. And it's this new app that you wrote about?
Right. So it's a social media app. Anybody can download it on their cell phones, and it's meant to engage friends and family. So what you can do if you have this app is you can choose to share all of the contacts in your phone contacts list with the app, and then it feeds.
Oh, that's when they get you. Share all your contacts.
Yeah.
You have to double opt into it before that happens, but then it feeds your contact information back into an RNC database that's tied to their absentee ballot program and their voter registration program. And so then the app can alert the user, hey, your friend Mike isn't registered to vote. You should send him a little note. Here's how to get registered to vote, Mike. Or you can say, hey, Cynthia, it's absentee voting time in your area. Here's how you can do that. It also has some other, social aspects to it. You can engage with other like-minded voters and do some chatting, and it's got some other social possibilities. But it's mainly a tool for recruitment and engagement and trying to narrow the gap between the GOP and the Democrats, who are a little bit ahead.
I'm smiling because as a reporter who throws away all the political mail that comes to my house, I can't imagine how annoyed I would be to start getting emails from friends saying, hey, it's time for early voting. I think they would be off my friend list very quickly. Okay, I want to go on to Pierre. You've been spending a lot of time this week writing about something we probably, speaking of technology, should be as concerned about as anything that's happened this week, and that's this hack of Yahoo. That's like huge.
Biggest ever, perhaps. 500 million customers worldwide, including the U.S., of course. Names, dates of birth, passwords, email addresses, gone, taken. They think this happened in 2014. The company says it just learned about it, according to our sources, in recent weeks. So if you're a person that is using anything online, this should give you great pause.
Well, and if you're Yahoo, which has had its troubles in the past several years, including the loss of a CEO, that should give you even greater pause.
Well, the key is that it's another reminder of hacking and how it's now becoming a part of our daily lives. And here's the other thing. This has enormous implications because we just reported tonight on our broadcast that Guess who authorities suspect is behind this hack?
Russia,
Russia.
as always. Someone should, no, I'm not going to say that. Ed, I want to talk to you about a couple stories you had to wrote about this week. And one of the interesting ones was about the growth of Hispanics at the ballot box, which everybody's focused on and writing about and covering and encouraging, but not the growth of Hispanics on the ballot.
Right. So roughly 17% of the country is Hispanic. According to a study back in 2014, as of then, from the county level on up, only 2% of the nation's office holders were Hispanic. Among minority groups, that was the least represented or the most underrepresented. Although you can look at it another way, this year you could see, if they all were to win, 13 more Hispanics elected to Congress, the House and the Senate, potentially 2 women. Probably only one of those women has a realistic chance. And then another 11 or so House candidates. And of those, maybe 9 or so actually have a shot. The number to beat is 10. 10 were elected in 2012 in the same class. There's some reason to believe that would be met or exceeded slightly this year. The most encouraging sign, if you're someone that's concerned about this kind of stuff, you go to Nevada this year. Harry Reid is retiring. You have a woman named Catherine Cortez Masto, the former Attorney General, running. She's half Mexican. And then in a congressional district there, you have a guy named Ruben Kihuen, who's a former Reid staffer and a Mexican immigrant who came into the country and moved to the country legally with his family back in the 80s, and now is on the verge of becoming the state's first Hispanic congressman. And the two of them say, look, we'd like to think we're ahead of a wave that is coming slowly in a lot of these states. Reid himself said, my political existence is owed to Hispanic voters who reelected me in 2010. This doesn't happen overnight, but eventually it's going to start happening across the country.
Does it matter if non-Hispanic candidates speak Spanish, like, say, Tim Kaine?
We don't have enough time to discuss that, Gwen, because it gets to some...
Not speaking Spanish just speaking.
Well, and it becomes a personal obsession of mine because I'm half Hispanic. And look, there's some appreciation if you're a white guy who has learned a language the way Tim Kaine has. And
right.
Rob Portman this week, I think this is what you're referring to, issued his first Spanish language ad ever in the state of Ohio. Only about 2% of the state is Hispanic, but he has money to burn.
Which he himself is speaking.
And he speaks it very well. I was reminded by a colleague this week that he actually had spent some time down in Texas working along the border with farmers there, and that's where he started to pick it up, and he continues to this day to practice it with bilingual staffers. So.
That can't hurt. I didn't know that. Okay, thank you all very much. If you're trying to know more, read up on Political Debate 101 for Moderators in my online blog, Gwen's Take. And check out watchthedebates.org. It's a cool new interactive site that takes you back through every single televised debate. That's brought to you by the PBS NewsHour in collaboration with Microsoft. And we'll see you here next time on the Washington Week Extra.